At 52 years old, I was delivering pizza in a beat-up Honda Civic when Walter Drummond opened his door and dropped to his knees. The December rain was coming down hard that night in Dallas, soaking through my Tony's Italian kitchen jacket, and I just wanted to collect my $12 tip and move on to the next delivery. My lower back was screaming from hunching over the steering wheel for 8 hours straight, and I still had 3 more stops before I could call it a night. But this old man was staring at my face like he'd seen a ghost, his hands trembling as he reached toward me. "Dear God," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You're Thomas Crawford's son, aren't you? I'm Jim Crawford, and 6 months ago I thought I had my life figured out." I stepped back, confused and concerned. The pizza bag felt heavy in my arms, and all I could think about was how my supervisor, Tony, would dock my pay if I took too long on deliveries. "Sir, are you okay? Should I call someone? Thomas Crawford was your father." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "I know those eyes, that jawline. You look exactly like him when he was young. I've been searching for you for 32 years, James." How did he know my name? My heart started racing. Nobody talked about my father anymore. He died when I was 2, back in 1992, and my mother had taken most of his memories to her grave 3 years ago. The few photos I had showed a young man who looked just like me, but that was about all I knew. "Because I was his business partner," Walter said, struggling to his feet. "We started a company together in 1990. Your father owned 50% of Crawford Drummond Developments." Walter grabbed my arm with surprising strength for a 78-year-old. "Please, you need to come inside. What I'm about to show you will change everything. I should have left." Tony's Italian kitchen had a strict policy about delivery times, and I was already running behind. My back was killing me, my feet hurt from cheap work shoes, and I had bills to pay. But something in Walter's voice, the desperation mixed with pure joy, made me follow him into his house. The living room looked like a shrine to the past. Black and white photographs covered every surface, documents lined the walls in frames, and boxes of papers sat stacked in corners. Walter moved with purpose despite his age, pulling down a specific photograph from the mantel with shaking hands. "This is your father and me. 1990, the day we incorporated Crawford Drummond Developments." The 2 young men in the photo stood in front of a massive tract of undeveloped land, hard hats in hand, grinning like they'd won the lottery. My father looked exactly like me at 28, same dark hair, same strong jaw, same slight crook in the nose from a childhood accident. It was like looking at myself in an old mirror. My throat went dry. He never mentioned any business to my mother. "Because we thought we'd failed," Walter said, his words tumbling out like a dam had burst. "Tommy and I met at a construction site in East Dallas. We were both foremen, both dreamers. We'd spend our lunch breaks talking about making it big, about building something that mattered." Walter pulled out a yellowed document, the incorporation papers for Crawford Drummond Developments. When the Riverside land came up for auction, 85 acres of undeveloped property that nobody wanted, your father scraped together $75,000. His entire life savings, plus a loan against your parents' house. I matched it. We were equal partners, 50-50. Everyone laughed at us, he continued. "Who builds a technology park 25 miles from downtown Dallas? The city rejected our development permits 8 times. The environmental board said the land had drainage issues. Your father was devastated. He'd risked everything, mortgaged your family's future on what looked like a foolish dream." Walter's voice cracked. 2 months later, he died in that car accident on I-35, thinking he'd ruined your mother's life and yours before you could even walk. I went to the funeral. Your mother was devastated, completely broken. When I tried to explain about the company, about the permits we were still fighting for, she screamed at me to get out. Said she never wanted to hear about Tommy's failed dreams again. He walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out folder after folder, decades of meticulous records. She moved away right after you were born, changed her name back to her maiden name, covered her tracks completely. I hired private investigators for years, but Dorothy was determined to disappear with you. 6 months after Tommy died, everything changed, Walter continued. The state announced the North Texas Technology Initiative. Suddenly, our worthless land was prime real estate. The development permits were approved overnight, Infrastructure funding materialized, and major companies started calling. Walter showed me lease agreements, bank statements, 32 years of careful documentation. I developed it for both of us, James. Every contract, every lease, every major decision, I asked myself what Tommy would want. I put his 50% in a trust, collecting rent, accumulating interest, waiting for the day I could find his son. My legs felt weak. The pizza bag had long since dropped to the floor. Forgotten. How much? Walter opened a current bank statement. The number at the bottom made my vision blur. $285 million. That's your father's share as of today, he said quietly. Google leases Building 15. Microsoft is in Building 23. We have 2 major hospitals, 31 office buildings, 3 shopping centers, all paying rent to Crawford Drummond Developments. The money kept growing, James. For 32 years, it just kept growing. I collapsed right there on Walter Drummond's Persian rug, my work uniform soaked with rain and sweat, trying to process what I was hearing. 6 months ago, I'd been a successful logistics director at Pinnacle Industries. 25 years I'd worked there, climbing from warehouse coordinator to senior management. I had a house in Plano, a career, respect from my peers. Then my ex-wife Alicia married my billionaire boss, Preston Harding, and they destroyed my life with false theft accusations. They blacklisted me from the logistics industry, took my home, my savings, everything I'd built over 2.5 decades. Enjoy being nobody, Alicia had texted me the day I started delivering pizzas. Now I was staring at a piece of paper that said I was worth more than the man who destroyed me. There's something else, Walter said, helping me to a chair. His voice took on a different tone, more serious. Your ex-wife's new husband, Preston Harding. His corporate headquarters sits on our land, Lot 47. He's been our tenant for 12 years. The room spun. Preston Harding rents from us? His entire empire operates from that location, Walter nodded. And there's a clause I insisted on when we wrote the original contracts. Any tenant who violates ethical business practices can have their lease terminated with 90 days' notice. Your father wanted honest businesses on our land, James. He believed commerce should lift communities, not destroy them. I thought about my daughter Bethany struggling to finish nursing school because I couldn't help with tuition anymore. About my son Christopher offering to loan me money he didn't have. About the humiliation of delivering pizzas to my former colleagues, seeing the pity in their eyes when they recognized me in that ridiculous uniform. Mr. Drummond, I said, standing up slowly, my knees creaking in a way they never used to. I think it's time Preston Harding met his new landlord. Walter smiled, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt something I'd forgotten existed. Hope. Not just for money or revenge, but for justice. Let me back up and tell you how I got here, because 6 months ago, my life looked completely different. I'd been with Pinnacle Industries for 25 years, working my way up from warehouse coordinator to director of logistics. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and I was good at it. My team of 38 people had named me Manager of the Year 3 times running. I had a corner office overlooking downtown Dallas, a house in Plano with a 2-car garage, and enough saved for a comfortable retirement. The divorce from Alicia had been final for 8 years, and honestly, I was better off without her. She'd always wanted more money, more status, more everything I couldn't provide on a logistics manager's salary. When she left me for some real estate developer who went bankrupt 2 years later, I figured I'd dodged a bullet. My kids had flourished once the constant fighting stopped. Bethany was in her final year at UT's nursing program, pulling straight A's and volunteering at children's hospitals on weekends. Christopher had just made partner at a law firm, the youngest in their history at 31. We had Sunday barbecues at my house twice a month. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and it was enough. Dad, you need to start dating again, Bethany would say, passing the potato salad across my patio table. You're only 52. That's young these days. I'm focused on my work, sweetheart. Besides, after your mother, I think I've had enough excitement for one lifetime. Christopher would laugh, loosening his tie in the Texas heat. Mom was definitely exciting. Remember when she tried to convince us that real estate developer was going to make her rich? What was his name? Brad something? We could joke about it then, about Alicia's constant schemes and her need to climb social ladders. Last I'd heard, she was working as a receptionist at a dental office in Garland, dating some insurance salesman. I felt sorry for the guy. Then came Pinnacle's annual company gala in June. The company always went overboard for the celebration. renting out the Omni Dallas Hotel ballroom, bringing in celebrity chefs, making everyone feel like royalty for one night. I was standing with my team, actually enjoying myself for once, when Preston Harding himself approached with a woman on his arm. Preston was the CEO and founder, a self-made billionaire who'd built Pinnacle from a small trucking company into a logistics empire. At 58, he was everything Texas business culture admired: tough, successful, and ruthless when crossed. I'd met him maybe 5 times in my 25 years there, always in formal settings. "Jim," Preston boomed in that voice that commanded boardrooms and probably intimidated senators, "I want you to meet my fiancée properly." The woman turned and my blood turned to ice water. Alicia stood there in a designer gown that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. Diamonds dripped from her ears, her hair was professionally styled, and that familiar predatory smile spread across her face like she'd just spotted fresh prey. "Hello, Jim," she said sweetly, her voice carrying that same tone she used to use when she wanted something expensive. "It's been too long." My team stood frozen around me. Janet, my assistant, looked like she'd seen a car accident. Dennis from operations suddenly found his champagne glass fascinating. Everyone knew my history with Alicia. I'd never hidden the fact that I was divorced. "Alicia's been telling me all about your history together," Preston said, his hand possessively on her waist. "Small world, isn't it? Your ex-wife becoming part of the Harding family." I forced a smile, feeling like I was swallowing glass. "Congratulations to you both. I'm sure you'll be very happy." "We should have dinner sometime," Alicia said, her eyes glittering with something that made my stomach turn. "All of us, like adults. I'd love to hear how the kids are doing. Christopher made partner, didn't he? And Bethany's almost a nurse?" The way she said the kids like she'd been part of their lives, like she hadn't missed 8 years of birthdays and graduations and Sunday barbecues, made my jaw clench. But I kept my composure. "They're doing great. Excuse me, I see someone I need to speak with." I walked away, but I could feel her eyes on me the rest of the night, and I swear I heard her laugh. That same laugh she used to make when she thought she was smarter than everyone else in the room. Over the next few weeks, Alicia started appearing everywhere at Pinnacle. She'd drop by to have lunch with Preston, always making sure to stop by my department to say hello. She'd attend board meetings she had no business being in, sitting next to Preston, whispering in his ear while staring directly at me. "Dad, something's wrong," Christopher said during one of our barbecues in July. The Texas heat was brutal that day, but I was grilling anyway, trying to maintain our family tradition. "You look exhausted, and you've lost weight. Just work stuff. It's been busy." Preston's fiancée is Alicia. Bethany dropped her fork, and it clattered against her plate. "Mom is marrying your boss." The word hung in the air like smoke from the grill. "Mom." Alicia had never really been a mother to them after the divorce. She'd missed birthdays, forgotten holidays, shown up to Christopher's law school graduation drunk and caused a scene. "It's fine," I lied. "I just have to stay professional." "Dad, you need to document everything," Christopher said, slipping into his lawyer voice. "This feels like trouble. Big trouble." Looking back now, I should have listened to Christopher. I should have seen the trap Alicia and Preston were setting. But I believed in the system, in hard work, in the idea that doing your job well was enough protection. I was wrong. The destruction of my life happened in exactly 72 hours, and it started with a phone call at 7:30 on a Monday morning in August. "James, we need you in human resources immediately," the voice said. It was Carol Patterson, the HR director, and her tone made my coffee taste like ash. In 25 years at Pinnacle, I'd never been called to HR for anything more serious than annual reviews. The walk from my office to the HR department felt like a funeral march. My knees were bothering me more than usual, probably the stress, and I found myself moving slower than I wanted to. Carol sat behind her desk with 2 security guards flanking the door, which should have been my first clue that this wasn't about updating my emergency contact information. A stack of papers lay between us like an accusation. "There's been a serious allegation of theft," Carol said, sliding the documents toward me with the kind of careful precision people use when handling evidence. $2.1 million of inventory is missing from Warehouse 7. The digital access logs show your override codes were used every single time. I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "That's impossible. I haven't been in Warehouse 7 in 4 months. My access codes are only used for emergency overrides, and there haven't been any emergencies. The records say otherwise. Carol's voice was flat, professional. Every transaction has your digital signature. 43 separate diversions over the past 90 days, all during off hours. My hands shook as I reviewed the papers. There was my access code, my digital signature, even my supposed login times, all at hours when I was home watching Netflix or grilling dinner for the kids. The timestamps showed activity at 2:17 a.m., 3:45 a.m., times when I was dead asleep in my bed in Plano. "This is fabricated," I said, my voice getting louder than I intended. "Check the security cameras. They'll show I wasn't there. My badge logs will prove I never entered that warehouse." Carol's expression didn't change. The cameras malfunctioned during all relevant time periods. Equipment failure, according to our IT department. The backup system also failed. Very unfortunate timing. That's convenient. I was standing now, anger overriding the shock. "You're telling me the cameras failed 43 separate times, perfectly coinciding with these alleged thefts?" "Mr. Harding wants this handled quietly," Carol continued, ignoring my outburst. "Resign now, sign this non-disclosure agreement, and there won't be criminal charges. We'll provide a neutral reference for future employment." Criminal charges for something I didn't do? I want my lawyer. I want to call Christopher right now. "That's your choice," Carol said, but her tone suggested it wasn't really a choice at all. "But Mr. Harding was hoping to avoid embarrassing your family. Your son Christopher just made partner, didn't he? Be a shame if McKenna and Associates learned their newest partner's father was under investigation for corporate theft." The threat was clear as Texas sunlight. I sat back down, my legs suddenly feeling weak. "You're threatening my son's career. I'm offering you a way out that protects everyone involved." I looked at the resignation letter, already typed up with my name at the bottom. All I had to do was sign, walk away from 25 years of my life, and pretend none of this happened. Keep my mouth shut and let them destroy my reputation quietly. I'm not resigning for something I didn't do. Carol sighed like she'd expected this response. "Then you're suspended, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. We'll be in touch through your attorney regarding the criminal investigation." The walk of shame through the office I'd helped build was the longest of my life. 38 faces of my team watching as security marched me past their desks like a common criminal. Janet was crying at her desk. Dennis from operations wouldn't meet my eyes. People I'd worked with for decades, people I'd trained and promoted and defended, all staring at me like I was a stranger. They took my badge, my keys, my laptop. Everything that proved I belonged there, gone in 5 minutes. Tuesday brought the police. 6 officers showed up at my door at 6 a.m. with a warrant, tearing through my house like I was some kind of criminal mastermind. They confiscated my personal computers, my files, even my old college textbooks. My neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, watched from her window as they led me out in handcuffs. "For questioning. Dad, what's happening?" Bethany sobbed over the phone from her dorm. "It's all over the news. The local stations are saying you stole millions from Pinnacle. It's a misunderstanding, sweetheart. Don't worry about the news." But by Wednesday, it was clear this was no misunderstanding. Every major logistics company in Texas had received an email from Pinnacle Industries about my integrity issues and the ongoing criminal investigation for corporate theft. My LinkedIn was flooded with former colleagues distancing themselves. 25 years of professional relationships evaporated in 25 hours. The text from Alicia came Wednesday evening while I was sitting in my empty house trying to figure out how to pay for a criminal defense attorney. "Enjoy being nobody, Jim. You always were too small for the life I wanted. Preston sends his regards." I called Christopher immediately. "Dad, I'll represent you myself." "No, absolutely not. I won't let them destroy your career too. You just made partner. This is exactly what they want, to drag you down with me. Then we'll find someone else, the best criminal defense attorney in Dallas." "With what money?" They froze my accounts pending the investigation. The lawyer I eventually hired, Patricia Norwood, cost $500 an hour. By week 3, my savings were hemorrhaging faster than blood from an arterial wound. By month 2, the house went into foreclosure. The legal bills were eating everything, and we were no closer to proving my innocence. "Jim, I hate to say this, but they've done this before," Patricia finally admitted during a meeting in her downtown office. "Preston Harding has a pattern. We found 3 other executives who crossed him and ended up with similar accusations. None of them could prove their innocence. So I'm just supposed to give up? I'm saying you're David fighting Goliath, except Goliath owns all the stones, the slingshot, and the battlefield. I sold everything. The house, my truck, my father's watch. The one thing I had from him besides old photographs. Christopher tried to give me money, but I refused to let my son pay for my destruction. Bethany offered to leave school and work, but I'd rather have died than let her sacrifice her future for Preston's lies. Tony's Italian Kitchen was the only place that didn't run a background check. Tony Moretti was old school, a 65-year-old Italian immigrant who'd built his restaurant from nothing. You show up, you work hard, you get paid, he told me during my interview. I don't care what the papers say. Papers lie. Work don't lie. Delivering pizza at 52 was a special kind of humiliation. My back ached from sitting in that beat-up Honda Civic for hours. I had to squint at the GPS because my eyes weren't what they used to be, and reading addresses at night was getting harder. My first delivery was to someone from my old department. The second was to a neighbor. The third was to one of Alicia's country club friends who laughed when she saw me and tipped me a condescending $20. "Keep the change, Jimmy," she said, with that fake sweetness rich women use when they think they're being charitable. 3 months into this new life, I'd stopped fighting. Pride was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. I delivered pizzas, lived in a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and old cigarette smoke, and avoided places where I might see people from my old life. The man who'd run logistics for a billion-dollar company now worried about having enough gas money to make it through the week. My back was constantly sore from the cheap mattress and long hours hunched over the steering wheel. My knees creaked when I got out of the car. Some nights I'd sit in that Honda Civic after my last delivery and wonder if this was it, if this was how the story of Jim Crawford ended. That December night, driving through the rain to make a delivery on Beacon Hill Drive, I thought I'd accepted my fate. I was nobody, just like Alicia said. I had no idea that Walter Drummond was about to change everything. Now, sitting in Walter's living room, staring at bank statements that showed $285 million, I felt something shifting inside me. Not just hope, but purpose. The same purpose my father must have felt when he mortgaged everything for a dream. "Walter," I said, looking at the lease agreement with Preston Harding's signature, "I need you to introduce me to the best lawyers you know." "Already done," Walter smiled. "Patricia Norwood from Norwood, Kane and Associates. She's expecting your call tomorrow morning. She's the one who helped me set up the trust fund for your inheritance." "Patricia Norwood? She's representing me in the criminal case." "I know. I've been paying her retainer for 3 months waiting for this day." The lawyers confirmed everything within a week. Patricia's team worked around the clock, verifying documents, establishing my inheritance, and most importantly, reviewing every single lease agreement on Crawford Drummond property. The morality clause Walter had insisted on was ironclad, written in language that even Preston Harding's army of corporate lawyers couldn't dispute. "Mr. Crawford," Patricia said, adjusting her glasses as we sat in her downtown Dallas office, "you don't just own the land under Pinnacle Industries. You own the leverage to destroy Preston Harding completely. His entire operation depends on that location. The specialized warehousing equipment alone would cost $40 million to relocate, and there's no comparable facility available in the Dallas market." "How long do we have to give him notice?" 90 days, according to the morality clause. "But James, we already have enough evidence from your case and the 3 previous victims to justify immediate action. The pattern of corporate harassment is undeniable." My phone buzzed. "Alicia." For the first time in months, I answered. "Jim." Her voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "Preston's freaking out about some lease issue. His lawyers are saying something about ownership changes. You wouldn't know anything about this, would you?" "Actually, I would," I said, watching Preston's Bentley pull into his reserved parking spot through Patricia's office window. "Tell Preston his new landlord wants to discuss his recent business practices. The meeting is in 1 hour." "What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? You deliver pizzas." "Not anymore." "Oh, and Alicia, that boring man you left 8 years ago, he owns the ground Preston's empire sits on. Every building, every warehouse, every square foot of Pinnacle Industries, it's all built on Crawford Drummond land." The silence was beautiful. Then came the shriek. "That's impossible. See you in the conference room." When we entered Pinnacle's executive conference room an hour later, Preston was already there with his legal team. 12 lawyers arranged like a defensive wall around the mahogany table that had probably cost more than most people's cars. Alicia sat beside him, her face pale under the fluorescent lights, her designer composure finally cracking. "Hello, Preston," I said, taking the seat at the head of the table where I'd sat exactly once before, during my promotion to director 5 years ago. Thank you for agreeing to meet with your landlord." Preston's face went from confused to furious to terrified in about 3 seconds. This is some kind of sick joke. Patricia slid the ownership documents across the table with the same careful precision Carol had used when showing me the false theft allegations. "No joke, Mr. Harding. Mr. Crawford inherited 50% of Crawford Drummond Developments from his father's estate. As of last week, he's assumed full control of lease negotiations for Lot 47. "You can't do this," Preston snarled, but his voice lacked its usual commanding tone. "Your lease expires in 90 days, I said calmly, and contains a comprehensive morality clause. "Patricia, would you share what our investigators found?" Patricia opened her laptop. 17 former employees have provided sworn affidavits about false accusations, planted evidence, and targeted harassment. We have documented evidence of the exact same theft accusation pattern used against 4 different executives over the past 6 years. Digital signatures falsified, security cameras mysteriously malfunctioning, identical time frames and amounts. "You can't prove anything," Preston said, but his bluster was fading fast. "We don't have to," I replied. "The morality clause doesn't require criminal conviction, just credible evidence of unethical business practices. But here's my offer, Preston. You have 2 choices." I stood up, looking down at the man who had destroyed my life for sport, who had married my ex-wife just to make the humiliation complete. Option 1. You vacate the premises in 90 days. Move your entire operation somewhere else. Good luck finding 2.3 million square feet of specialized warehouse space with your infrastructure requirements in the Dallas market, Preston's lead attorney whispered urgently in his ear. The color drained from his face as he realized his entire empire stood on land controlled by the man he'd tried to destroy. Or, Preston's voice cracked. Option 2. You publicly clear my name, pay me $50 million in damages, and sign a new lease at triple the current rate. You also divorce my ex-wife immediately and issue a public apology for the false accusations. "You can't force me to divorce her," Preston slammed his fist on the table. "No, but I can make staying married to her very expensive. Every month you remain married, the rent doubles. Month 1, $8 million. Month 2, $16 million. Month 3, $32 million. How long before your board of directors decides she's not worth bankrupting the company?" Alicia was standing now, backing toward the door like a cornered animal. "Jim, baby, we can work this out. I never meant for things to go this far." "Save it," I said, not even looking at her. "Preston, you have 48 hours to decide. After that, I start the eviction process and go public with everything." Preston chose to fight. He lost spectacularly. Within a week of our meeting, his board of directors called an emergency session. Patricia had made sure they received copies of every sworn affidavit, every piece of evidence showing Preston's pattern of destroying employees' lives. The Dallas Morning News got an anonymous tip about the story, and suddenly Preston Harding wasn't the brilliant CEO anymore. He was the billionaire sociopath who destroyed working families for entertainment. The board gave him 2 options: resign with a modest severance package or be fired publicly with criminal referrals. He chose to slink away with whatever dignity remained. The divorce papers were filed within a week. Turns out when you marry someone for money and the money disappears, love disappears pretty quickly too. The 17 former employees Preston had destroyed over the years each received $3 million from the settlement fund we established. Dennis from operations cried when he got the call. "Jim, you didn't just save yourself, you saved all of us." Walter became the grandfather I'd never had. We spent evenings going through my father's old papers, learning about the man I'd barely known. "Your father always said something," Walter told me one evening as we watched the sunset over the Dallas skyline. He said, "Wealth without purpose is just paper, but wealth with purpose can change the world." We converted a quarter of the technology corridor into affordable housing for displaced workers. The Thomas Crawford Foundation launched with a $75 million endowment, specifically helping families affected by corporate retaliation and false accusations. Bethany graduated debt-free and with honors. She now runs the medical clinic we built in East Dallas, providing free health care to working families. Christopher left his firm and started his own practice, specializing in defending employees against corporate harassment. His first case was pro bono, defending a janitor accused of theft by his employer, using the exact same playbook Preston had used on me. Standing in my father's old office, now mine, Walter placed his hand on my shoulder. "Thomas would be proud, Jim. You didn't just reclaim your wealth. You reclaimed your father's dream of using success to protect people who can't protect themselves." I looked at the photo of my father on the wall, that young man full of hope, standing in front of undeveloped land that everyone said was worthless. He died thinking he was a failure, never knowing he'd built an empire. But more importantly, he'd built it with integrity, with clauses that demanded ethical behavior, with a vision that business should serve communities, not destroy them. The best revenge wasn't the money or watching Preston lose everything. It was the letter I got from a single mother whose husband had been falsely accused by his employer. Our foundation had helped clear his name and get his job back. She sent a photo of her family at Christmas, her kids smiling under their tree. "Thank you for showing us that good people still win sometimes," she wrote. "Sometimes being nobody is just the universe's way of preparing you to become somebody who matters." My father left me more than money. He left me purpose. And at 52, I finally understood what that meant.